Ariadne moved like a wisp of night through the pre-dawn gloom, her senses stretched taut. The old outpost loomed ahead, suspiciously quiet. Her training under Shojin dictated every step. She flowed from shadow to shadow, her breathing shallow, her footfalls silent upon the leaf-littered ground. High in the skeleton of a dead oak, she saw the raven. It was not its usual watchful self. It paced along the branch in frantic, jerky hops, its head darting towards her, then towards the silent fortress, then back again. It let out a sharp, guttural screech, a sound more alarm than greeting. For the first time, the bird seemed not a guide, but a sentry trying to bar a gate. It knows, a distant part of her mind whispered. She disregarded it. Omens were for those who feared outcomes. She had none. Her scouting was a masterpiece of applied stealth. She scaled a crumbling wall using minute cracks as footholds, her body pressed flat against the stone. At the top, she observed the courtyard. 2 scouts patrolled with a bored, predictable rhythm. It was too easy. A sliver of doubt, honed from years of survival, prickled at her. Why such lax security for a place of rumored counsel? But her hubris smothered the question. They are complacent. Bellum underestimates the threat. She chose to see arrogance in her enemy, a reflection of her own. The stealth kills were clinical artworks. The first scout never heard her descent. She landed behind him, one hand clamping over his mouth, the other driving a kunai up and into the base of his skull. He spasmed once and was still. She lowered him silently. The second met a wire-thin garrote from a darkened archway, his choked gasp lost in the sigh of the wind. She left their bodies concealed, a ghost erasing traces of its passage. She penetrated deeper, the silent heart of the complex, and found it still, empty. The trap, when it sprang, was not with a shout, but with a sigh. Torches flared to life around the central courtyard, not with the fumble of a lamp, but with a sudden, collective whoosh of ignited oil. From behind pillars, from doorways she had deemed abandoned, soldiers of the Lumen Legion stepped forward, their polished armor reflecting the firelight. They did not charge. They simply formed an impassive, gleaming circle. From the central keep, 4 figures emerged. Leading them was a man whose presence seemed to bend the very light around him. He wore armor of severe, elegant lines, his face stern and etched with the patience of deep strata of stone. This was Bellum, the Lord of War. To his right stood Ignis, elemental of fire, who leaned against the doorway with casual disinterest, a flickering flame dancing over his knuckles. To his left were Fulgur, whose eyes crackled with barely contained energy, and Leveneron, whose gaze was as cold and deep as a winter lake.
The Red Moon Assassin. Your trail of corpses was an eloquent invitation. I simply chose the venue for our audience.
Ariadne said nothing. Her mind raced, not with fear, but with a furious recalculation. Every piece of intelligence, every easily dispatched guard had been a carefully laid thread, and she had woven herself into the net.
You sought a test. Let us see if the student's skill justifies the clamor.
This is beneath me.
Fulgur and Leveneron stepped forward. There was no ceremony. Fulgur moved first, a blur of motion, his blade a streak of silver. Ariadne parried, the clash ringing loud in the enclosed space. Instantly, Leveneron was there, his attacks flowing like a relentless tide, forcing her to pivot, to give ground. She did not strike back, not yet. Her eyes narrowed, her entire being focused on reading them. She let them lead, studying the rhythm of Fulgur's aggression, all forward momentum, reliant on overpowering speed, and the cadence of Leveneron's defense, which flowed from one predictable guard to the next. For minutes, it was less a battle and more a critical analysis conducted at blade point. She was not overwhelmed, she was preoccupied. A dispassionate part of her mind noted the flaws. Fulgur overcommitted on every lunge. Leveneron's footwork was rigid, rooted. The contest was not challenging. It was informative. Then, she ceased reacting and began to act. As Fulgur charged again, she sidestepped not a moment too late, but a heartbeat too early. His own momentum carried him past her. Her hand shot out, not to cut, but to clamp onto his wrist. She used his speed against him, twisting with a sharp, precise torque. The bones in his wrist ground together. With a cry, his sword clattered to the stone. In the same motion, she pivoted and hurled him into Leveneron's path. Leveneron, thrown off rhythm, raised his blade. Ariadne was already inside his guard. A brutal knife-hand strike to the nerves of his forearm deadened his grip. Her other hand snatched the falling sword from the air before it could hit the ground. She stood for a moment between the two disarmed elementals, holding both of their blades. With a look of utter contempt, she flung the weapons aside. They skittered across the courtyard, coming to rest near Bellam's feet. The message was clear. Their swordplay was but a mere child's game to her. She settled back into a fluid, open-handed stance.
Is this the extent of the Lord of War's vanguard? Or do you only know how to fight with the elements holding your hand?
Enough.
The dance ended. The storm changed. Fulgur disengaged, leaping back. He raised a hand, and the air itself screamed. A blinding, searing lance of pure lightning tore from his fingertips towards her. Ariadne threw herself aside, the heat scorching her side as the bolt cratered the stone where she had stood. Before she could find her feet, Leveneron gestured. The water from a nearby trough, from the very moisture in the morning air, coalesced into a whip-like tendril. It snapped around her ankle with the force of a landslide and yanked. She slammed into the ground, the breath driven from her lungs. This was no longer a contest of skill, it was an execution by elemental decree. Lightning harried her, forcing her into frantic, smoking dodges. Water seized her limbs, weighted her clothes, and crashed into her like a solid wall. The supreme mastery she had shown moments before was rendered meaningless against the raw, unthinking force of the world itself. A blast of concussive water hurled her across the courtyard. She skidded through dirt and blood, the coppery grit of it filling her mouth. As she pushed herself up, shaking, vision swimming, her eyes found the shadows of the perimeter wall. There, half hidden, was Altissimus. His face was a mask of utter anguish, his hand white-knuckled on his sword hilt. Every fiber of his being was coiled to spring forward, their eyes locked. Through the pain, through the ringing in her ears, she gave a single, sharp, desperate shake of her head. The conflict that tore across his face was its own kind of violence. The man of honor, sworn to protect, warred with the warrior who understood the sanctity of a chosen stand. To intervene would save her body and destroy her spirit. A sob choked him. He did not look away as Fulgur's lightning caught her in the side, sending her convulsing to the stones. He did not blink as Leveneron's water hammered down again. He stood, a statue of helpless grief, honoring her terrible wish even as it broke him. The barrage was relentless. Ariadne's world narrowed to impact, searing pain, and the struggle to rise. Each time she fell, she clawed her way up, until finally a whip of water wrapped around her throat and slammed her head against the flagstones. Darkness surged, irresistible. As her consciousness fled, the last thing she saw was Bellam's impassive face looking down, and from the shadows, the glint of tears on Altissimus's cheeks. Silence returned to the courtyard, broken only by the crackle of torches and Ariadne's shallow, ragged breath. Bellam gestured. Soldiers moved forward to collect the broken form of the Akai Tsuki shinobi. Frozen no longer, Altissimus melted back into the deeper shadows, his heart a cold, hard stone of dread and resolve. Altissimus bent to retrieve her most treasured possession, the hooded scarf, all that remained of her mother's crimson dress. He held it close, as though in that fragile cloth, almost as if he were holding Ariadne herself. They would take her, and he would follow.